Welcome to New Awakenings with Edgar, Cayce's A.R.E, where we have some incredible conversations that are designed to help you as you embark upon or even continue your spiritual journey. I'm your host, Karen, and as you can see today, I am flying solo. Will is off on some very top secret mission. So top secret, I don't even know what it is. But I'm excited to be here and looking forward to a fantastic conversation because our guest today is a familiar face for many of you. He has traveled the globe exploring mystical locations and supernatural phenomenon. He's a fourth-generation psychic medium and an Oxford-educated attorney, and he also brings an impressive background in science, quantum physics, near-death experiences, history, archaeology, philosophy, etc., etc. The list is so long. He headlines conferences across the country, appears internationally on TV and radio, and he co-hosts the weekly live stream show, The Psychic and the Doc, on Transformation Network. He's also a best-selling author, of course, and so much more. And I am thrilled to welcome back to the show the man you may know as the psychic lawyer, Mark Anthony. Welcome, Mark Anthony.
Thank you. It's so great to be back here, and I'm really looking forward to returning to Edgar Cayce in November for, I keep calling it the Mediumship Conference, but I know that's not the official name, but I have been promoting it on my social media and in interviews, and I just absolutely love working with you and everybody else at Edgar Cayce.
Well, we love that you are here and everything that you are doing and everything that you've done and that you're bringing to the table and teaching us all about. It's just, I can't, if I would have gone through the whole introduction, it would have taken the entire time for the podcast. But you are definitely a man to admire. So we've had you on the show before and gotten some information about your background, but for those who haven't had a chance to catch that episode, you realized you had your psychic abilities at a young age. Tell us a little bit about that.
Both of my parents had these abilities, and it runs on both sides of the family back into the 1890s. So that's why, I say that I'm a fourth generation psychic medium. Logically, I believe it goes further than that, but it was hard to find people that were still alive that could tell me stories that went past the 1890s. And so my dad was a U.S. Navy SEAL, and after the Navy, he went into aerospace, became an aerospace NASA engineer. Mom was a commercial artist, and they both had the ability to perceive spirits, but they didn't do it professionally. And so when I was about 3.5 years old, I started interacting with my invisible friends. Not unusual for toddlers, but Mom and Dad can see and perceive who I'm talking to, and their reactions were quite different. I remember Mom going, "Oh, he's got it," and Dad going, "Ah, jeez, he's got it."
Well, that must have been a very interesting path for your father, being in the Navy. Your mother as an artist, I can understand artists tend to be more open to this sort of thing, but someone who's in the military and just, you think of a certain mindset. So I imagine that was interesting for him to kind of reconcile these both worlds. And then you did the same thing, becoming a lawyer. How did you reconcile those?
How did that happen? Well, see, about 6 months after I started seeing spirits, I was very, very ill, and it's a fairly long story, so I don't want to go too deeply into that, and I do explain it in great detail in my book, The Afterlife Frequency, but I had a near-death experience. And when I came out of that, everything seemed to intensify. And my parents were really good about, you can talk to this about this to us, but don't talk to other people about it. And I went to Catholic school, and so here I am, 5 years old, I started first grade, and I hear them talking about angels and spirits and saints and Mother Mary and Jesus and all these supernatural entities. So my initial impression was, hey, this is the place for me. And then of course I started hearing other things that they were saying. And because my father told me, don't talk about this to anyone but your mother and I. And as I got older, I was drawn to the clergy, which is not unusual for mediums. But the more I looked into doing that, all I could see in religion were a lot of rules and regulations, what you can't do, what you can't say, what you can't. And so I went into law, and I always thought that was funny.
Of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah, there's too many rules and regulations in the
Yeah.
clergy, so I go into the legal profession. It's kind of like jumping out of the frying pan right into the regulatory fire. And but I always enjoyed public speaking. I enjoyed working with people. I like to research, to write. And so I started off as a prosecutor working for the state of Florida. And I did all types of cases. I started off in the misdemeanor division, obviously, and worked my way up into very severe felony cases, murders, child abuse. I mean, I did everything. And then I left the prosecutor's office and I went into private practice, initially starting off doing strictly criminal defense, but then my practice branched into complex civil litigation, personal injury. And when I was working with personal injury, I started specializing in brain injury cases. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it gave me a really great background in anatomy and physiology. Plus, my work in the law got me to work with physicists, forensics, chemists, neurobiologists, you name it. Because you have to know about all these things when you're trying cases. And then there came a point where that door closed and another one opened. And if I may share this,
Sure.
what happened was I was in court. Actually, the day before that, I was in my office and I was a senior partner of a law firm. And I started thinking about spaghetti. Now, my mother's family's of Italian descent, so it's not unusual to think about spaghetti. But I'm thinking spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti. And the phone rings. My secretary put through a call. It was my mom. And mom said, "Hey, honey, I made spaghetti for lunch. If you could make it, that would be great." And I thought, well, sure. My parents their house was about 5 miles from my office. So I went over and had beautiful lunch with them. And, we were joking and laughing. But I remember mom looked really kind of tired that day. And as I was leaving, she said, "I want to say something." I said, "What?" She goes, "Mark, I love you so much. I'm so happy that you're my son." And she hugged me and kissed me. And I said, "I love you too, Mom." But when I left, just something felt very ominous that day. And growing up in a family of psychics, we're always getting feelings.
Yeah.
But it's something wasn't right. And the next day I was in court and the judge's assistant called me out of the courtroom into the judge's chambers and she said, "You have to take this call." And it was my secretary who was in tears, and she said, "Your dad called, your mom just died."
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
Wow.
And I nosedived into depression. I mean, it just talk about pulling the rug right out from under my feet. And now I know why mom, she knew something was wrong too, and she needed to say goodbye to me.
Yeah.
So about 3 weeks later, I'm driving back from court, and still it's only 3 weeks, and so I'm still grieving. But
Of course.
I figured, okay, I'm handling this. But then one of those waves of grief hit me, and everyone who's listening to this, who's lost a loved one, knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You think everything has planed out, like the ocean has calm, but then all of a sudden a tsunami hit. So I pulled over into a convenience store parking lot, but I was out of ways because I didn't want anyone around me. I thought, all right, let me cry this out because I can't walk into my office, like this. I have to, once again, I'm running a law firm. And then all of a sudden, this flash of light went off in the car, and I looked to the passenger side, and there's my mother silhouette in this beautiful silver white light just for an instant. I've been seeing spirits my whole life, but this, and I'm trying to process this when her voice resonates through me. And she said, "You have been given the gift of mediumship so that you would not be crushed by grief. But now you must help those who are suffering with their grief." All right, now I'm breaking out in a sweat. And before I could even begin to assimilate that, I heard her voice again. And she said, "Mark, it is your life's mission to help people understand that God exists, that heaven exists, that souls are immortal living beings, that humans can communicate with souls, and that we will all be reunited when it is your appointed time to leave that world and come into the light you call God. All right, I am soaking wet with
Wow.
sweat, and all that could come out of my mouth was, okay.
Oh
And
my
then I'm like,
gosh.
I can't tell anybody this. They're going to think I'm insane. Actually, fear started bubbling up, but then that melted away, and it dawned on me in that moment, my life had changed forever. And so then a series of events were set into motion. And like not even a week later, this guy contacted me. It was a friend of mine, and he was running for office, and he had just won the election. And he said, I want you to head up, work for this government agency as judicial liaison. So I was like, wow, okay. So I was able to sell my law practice, and then I began work on my first book, Never Letting Go. Never Letting Go came out. And my manager, Rocky, and everybody at Edgar Cayce knows Rocky because she travels with me. She got me a speaking engagement in New York City, which included MSNBC. And it was really cool because we got to go to 30 Rock, and we were in the studio next to where they were doing Saturday Night Live. And it was like, hey, this is the greatest. And then right after that, we had to go to Boston because she had booked me to speak at Harvard about the afterlife and to sign copies of my book. So there we are at Harvard. And it was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and it was really cold out. And I remember we had coffee, and it was steaming. And all of a sudden, my cell phone rings, and it's the elected official. And he starts reading me the riot act. You're taking too much time off. I say, yes, but it's all vacation time. He said, there's a particular political party, I won't name it, who is up in arms that I have a psychic on staff. I said, yes, but you didn't hire me because I'm a psychic. You hired me because of my managerial and legal experience. And he was going on and on. And I said, sir, I want to thank you for employing me, but I want to make this very simple for you. Accept this as my resignation. And he said, oh, okay. And I hung up my phone, and then I looked at Rocky and said, Rocky, I just quit the legal profession. And she said, Mark, take a look around. Where are you? And I'm like, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And she goes, and what are you doing in an hour? I said, speaking about the afterlife and signing copies of my book, Never Letting Go, at Harvard. And she said, don't you think you're exactly where you're supposed to be?
It's just incredible. The universe does that, right? The universe, spirit, God, it puts us where we need to be, doing what we're supposed to do when we're supposed to.
It does. I hear colleagues of mine, they talk about their spiritual experience, and they're on a mountaintop or in a forest. Mine was more like a fire hose right to the face.
Well, listening to everything you're saying, I'm picturing the inside of your brain like this kaleidoscope of lifestyles between the family, the military, the arts, being a lawyer, the experiences you've had, and it could either be a beautiful kaleidoscope or a terrifying one. And you have taken it, somehow managed to take all of these incredible experiences and made it the beautiful kaleidoscope. And just looking, I'm like, with everything that you've talked about, like, wow, he's very sane, sane, thriving, and teaching and helping. And I think that mission that you were given by your mom to help really has just opened up the entire world for you.
It really did. And I find spirit communication an important therapeutic in the journey through grief. Now, especially Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce, there's two psychics in history, to me, that are on a pedestal. One is Nostradamus, and the other is Edgar Cayce, because they were both so incredibly profound. The information they brought through, both of them were healers, both of them had tremendous psychic abilities. Edgar Cayce, there's been probably close to 400 books written about him. He's clearly one of the most studied psychics in history. And from all accounts, one heck of a nice guy.
Yes.
Real nice. And I was really privileged because about It was before the pandemic. It was probably around 2018, 2019. This woman asked me to do a reading for her father, and he was 90 years old, and I think his name was Billy Smith. And at the end of the reading, he said, I know you go to Edgar Cayce a lot. He said, when I was 10 years old, my mother took me with her to a reading with Edgar Cayce. And I'm like, you
Wow.
actually sat through a reading with Edgar Cayce? I go, what happened? And he said, I don't remember. I was
Oh,
10 years old and I wasn't paying attention.
oh
But,
my
but
gosh.
I mean, despite that, I mean, he was 10 years old,
Yeah.
but I couldn't believe that I actually did a reading for somebody who was in a reading with Edgar Cayce. Talk about an honor. That was so humbling.
That is incredible. And what are the odds? That's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. But see, it's because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing that you've had these experiences. Now, something that you mentioned, and I want to, before we run out of time, I want to touch on this, not touch on it, but explore near-death experiences.
Yes.
And you've had one, and there are some commonalities. And so, we only have a little bit of time, but I want to get this in. What do near-death experiences have in common in the different people that have had them?
Near-death experiences, they happen in stages, but there's similarities between all of them. And we know this not only through the International Association for Near-Death Studies and the work of the great Dr. Raymond Moody, but also the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, the Science and Medical Network in the UK, and of course, the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment. They can happen to anyone. Age, religion, whether you believe in an afterlife or God or not, is not a factor. Anesthesia is not a factor. Race, socioeconomic status, gender, not a factor. People that have them experience a sense of interconnectedness, that all things are interconnected. People emerge from it with their intuitive and psychic abilities enhanced, including a proclivity for prophetic dreams of future events. People that have them experience a floating sensation traveling through a tunnel or perhaps a path into a light. They will encounter deceased loved ones and other spiritual beings. Most NDEers return with a belief in reincarnation, and others, Nancy Evans Bush, President Emerita of the International Association of Near-Death Studies and one of the foremost experts on near-death experiences in the world, said, near-death experiencers don't think there's a God, they know.
Yes.
And skeptics are claiming that near-death experiences are a side effect of a dying brain because of the production of a chemical called dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT in the brain. And DMT is a natural hallucinogenic. It can be synthesized. And in test studies, when DMT has been induced on test subjects, they report feeling like a floating sensation and that the experience was spiritual. So a lot of people say, well, near-death experiences aren't real. It's only because of DMT. What DMTs do not do, they do not give you a life review where you go through your entire life. They do not give you veridical perception where your spirit leaves the body and sees things happening separate from the body in real time, such as what your family is talking about down the corridor in a room at the hospital while you're laying there. What they don't do is make you encounter deceased loved ones and other spiritual beings. So there's no veridical perception, there's no prophetic abilities. And the way I like to look at this is artificial recreation of something is not the genuine experience. In the 1700s, Luigi Galvani discovered bioelectricity, and he got bodies of dead frogs and would shock them with electricity, and the leg would convulse. Okay, but did this frog come back to life? Right. No. So artificial recreation of neuromuscular activity is not the authentic experience of life. Although about 20 years later, it did give a 19-year-old writer, Mary Shelley, a great idea for a book called Frankenstein.
It sure did. Wow. I don't know how you managed to bring that to Frankenstein, but you did it perfectly. Well, you know, I think that one of the wonderful things about people that are talking about the NDEs is that it's helping to relieve the fear. And I think that's people in this space, you know, the fear of death. And that's something that with what you're doing, it's so important because fear is something that just drives us in very negative ways. So helping people to get rid of that fear of death, fear of being alone, you know, the universal consciousness, all of this, I think that's so important. And I wish I could talk to you all day. My producers tell me that we're running out of time here. So this has been fascinating. If someone wants to, I know they can see you here at the A.R.E. coming up soon, but if someone wants to get your books, what's the best way to get that, or to even get in touch with you to schedule a session?
Well, my books are generally on sale at the Edgar Cayce Association bookstore, but you can also visit my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com, just like my latest book, The Afterlife Frequency. And you'll see links there to purchase my books through Amazon, but they're on sale at all fine bookstores, Barnes & Noble, and mom and pop shops throughout the world. Also, when you go to my website, I invite you to sign up for my newsletter that'll keep you up to date on my tour schedule, including when I will be at Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia. And also, I write for Best Holistic Life magazine. And every month I write an article either about spirituality or some of my adventures into examining supernatural and mystical phenomenon. You can also find out about scheduling one-on-one readings and online events. You can find out about all of that by visiting afterlifefrequency.com.
Well, great. I am sure we'll get all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming back. I hope we get to chat again sometime in the near future, because this has been fantastic.
Thank you. Many blessings. And to everyone listening, may God bless you.
And that is it for the episode today. But if you've missed any of it or want to catch any of the other episodes, you can find them all on edgarcayce.org/resources. So we will see you next time on New Awakenings with Edgar Cayce's A.R.E. Bye.